Hello, hello. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So, my name is Alyssa, and I am a doctor of physical therapy with Keep the Adventure Alive Physical Therapy and Performance. We're here based in Salt Lake City, Utah. And this is our weekly interview series where we're interviewing people that have some proximity in the field of health and wellness, and especially helping you guys with arthritis or chronic joint pain. And so today I have Dr. Morgan Nolte, who is specializing in weight loss. And I know I've gotten a ton of questions lately about weight loss because a lot of times we get into this chronic pain, this joint pain, we stop doing activity, we start to put on weight, we don't want to do more activity because of pain, and you just kind of get down this vicious cycle. So we're going to talk today about some of the best and most effective weight loss strategies and how we can best start weight loss, especially with dealing with chronic pain or other chronic health conditions. And so first, if you are watching live, I want you to go ahead and comment live in the comments below. So if you're watching live, comment live. And if you're watching on the replay, comment replay. The more comments that we get, the more people that are going to see this video and the more people that we can help. Okay, so now I want Dr. Morgan Nolte to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about how you went. So she's a physical therapist, and how you went from physical therapy to specializing into the weight loss category. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then kind of how you got into the weight loss prevention management type thing.
All right. So hi, everybody. Whether you're watching live or replay, definitely do comment. That really means a lot, and I like kind of just interacting with the people online. So yes, I'm Dr. Morgan Nolte. I'm a board-certified clinical specialist in geriatric physical therapy. And what that means is I'm really, really good at working with people 50 plus. I'm really good at managing multiple comorbidities, whether that's hypertension, diabetes, if they've had a stroke, dementia. I've worked with probably every single condition that somebody over 50 could have. And I've worked in all sorts of different settings. I'm from Nebraska. Go Huskers, even though our game this weekend was canceled. Because Wisconsin people all got COVID, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
So my Halloween plans are changing. Yeah. But anywho, I realized that there were some really common themes in geriatric physical therapy. I've worked in almost every setting: outpatient, skilled nursing facility, long-term care, home care. So I would see people in various settings, and I would do very in-depth chart reviews. I'm not the kind of physical therapist that just wings it. All right. I was in early. I knew the janitor. I knew what kind of candy he liked, and I saved him the Halloween candy. The lights would turn off on me. I'd have to wiggle my chair so the lights would come back on so I could keep documenting. So I'm a vigorous researcher. And what I noticed was almost every single person in there had a triad of conditions and medications. Okay, they had diabetes, they had high blood pressure, and they had abnormal blood lipids. So whether that's high cholesterol, high triglycerides. And I thought to myself, why are all of these happening at the same time? Right? It seems like there should be some underlying factor. And a lot of research later led me to a condition called insulin resistance. And Dr. Jason Fung is really the best person that I've found in this topic. He's written, I think, a lot of books, but the two main ones that people watching this video will find helpful if they have really severe chronic pain or joint pain are the Obesity Code and the Diabetes Code. So I really dove down that research rabbit hole to figure out, how can I prevent these conditions? Because we're throwing so much money through Medicare, through other health insurance companies, into these chronic conditions, not even medications, right? Just the therapy, the hospitalizations, the surgery. And naturally, I'm a very proactive person. And it was kind of killing me to work in a system that was so reactive in nature. So that's that was the spark, you know, and I always wanted somewhere to point my patients and my clients in the right direction towards weight loss. And that was really my passion. I am a pretty healthy person. I don't ever preach perfection. I'm like, let's do 80%, 80 to 90%, pretty healthy. And then 10 to 20% of the time, let's just, forget about it. And that's a pretty sustainable method for most people. And it just wasn't out there, And so I knew that I've had many clients who have gone through Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Octavia, Nutrisystem, and those weren't working. I mean, they would do them, they would spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on things, and they would regain the weight. And that means that they're not preventing disease, because that's my why. I have a YouTube channel, and you always see the keep your eye on your why sign behind me. So my why is preventing people from needing a geriatric physical therapist in the first place. And we do that through sustainable weight loss, through habit change, and obviously knowledge is power. I think you're doing such an excellent job providing knowledge for people who have pain and osteoarthritis. And I'm trying to do the same thing with weight loss. And I started with one-on-one clients, and then that's evolved to developing my own system. My website is weightlossforhealth.com. So anyone can go check that out. I have an online program that includes weekly office hours with myself and an online community. So I've built this course that gives you the education that you need to break past all of these weight loss myths. And there are so many of them, to learn how to lower your insulin resistance and lower your inflammation. Because when you do that, not only will you lose weight, but your blood sugars are going to come down. Your cholesterol, your triglycerides, your blood pressure will come down. Therefore, you will reduce your risk for chronic disease and reduce your need for a geriatric physical therapist. That's how I got here.
Hey, there we go. I mean, that all sounds, it's definitely lacking. And I know that the knowledge out there is just there's a lot of misinformation out there. And a lot of times we find ourselves Google searching things best weight loss and things. And so what would you say is one of the biggest things that you typically see that helps your clients, especially when starting out? When they have these weight loss goals, what is kind of the first thing that you typically start with to see success?
That is such a hard question, honestly, because there's a lot that goes into it. And I think the first thing is mindset. You have to recognize the false beliefs about weight loss that you have, and you have to replace them with truth. And the biggest false belief that I help people work through is the calories in, calories out model of weight gain. And I tell them, your body is not a calculator and it's not a bank account. If it was that easy, 7 out of 10 Americans would not be overweight or obese. And we have to recognize the misinformation that we've been fed. So that's the first thing, like how fast your hair grows, how fast your nails grow, how fast your heart beats, how fast you breathe. That is all hormonally regulated, as is your body fat.
Okay.
So your body fat is controlled by a hormone called insulin, which is your primary fat storage hormone. And so that's really where I start with people. And I have a free masterclass that teaches people how to lower insulin and lower inflammation. And they can download that for free. It's one of the 6 masterclasses in my course at weightlossforhealth.com/masterclass. And that's why that's kind of my free resource, is because that's really where I have to get people to buy into the fact that the fad diets are not going to work. They are not going to work for long-term weight loss. Now that's number 1. Number 2 is they have to develop a long-term mindset. They have to recognize this weight didn't come on overnight, and it's not going to come off overnight. Right. And that's a good thing. So I think what sets me apart is I realize, okay, I have to learn the truth about how to lose weight, how to prevent disease. And then I realized that's not enough, because habit change is so important. And you know that, like, if people don't follow through on an exercise program, they are not going to see the results.
Right. Consistency is key.
Yes, it is so key. And so I've built that into my program. There's a whole module on follow through, a whole masterclass on how to change your habits. And I do that because I want to give them the best chance possible to succeed. Yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my part here, and I'm going to figure out the information that you need to know to change your habits. And then 1, you asked for some specific things. So the masterclass on insulin resistance and inflammation is a great place to start. Number 2, a really quick habit tip is something called an implementation intention. And this can work whether you're trying to lose weight, whether you're trying to save money, whatever you're trying to do, this is going to work for you. And what it is, it comes from Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is the best habit change book that I've read. And I always talk about James Clear because I'm kind of obsessed with him. So he's great. And an implementation intention is basically a mini goal every week. So a template would be, I will insert your behavior insert a location, a date, a time, because insert your reason. So a bad habit that I had for a long time was snacking after dinner. So I would say, I will brush my teeth right after dinner every single night to reduce my snacking, increase my fasting window, so that I, can lose the weight, or I didn't really want to lose weight, but just stop snacking. It's not a good habit. I knew it would catch up with me. So that's another really quick tip that you ask where they start. We start with myths about weight loss, and we start with recognizing this is a long-term game and you got to be in it for the long haul.
Okay, absolutely. And then, so playing off that myth, what is kind of one of the biggest myths that you find that people are asking you about or hearing or believing? What's the biggest one?
Oh gosh, I think probably the fat thing. So when we look at insulin, okay, a lot of people have believed the calorie model for obesity, and fat has the most calories per gram of macronutrients. So if we're talking macronutrients, for those who aren't familiar, you have carbohydrates. Under the carbohydrate umbrella, you have starches, you have sugars, and you have fiber. All right, then we have proteins, and then we have fat. Now, there are some unhealthy fats and there are some healthy fats, but in general, fats have the lowest insulin response out of all three macronutrients. Okay, so starches and sugars, I'm going to try to do it like this, are going to spike your blood sugar and your blood insulin. Fiber will not. Protein has a moderate response, and then fat has the lowest. That's why people who go on keto lose a ton of weight, because they get into nutritional ketosis, which is your fat burning mode, and they burn fat. The problem with keto is it's not sustainable for a lot of people. I'm all about, why would you ever want to lose weight in a way that you can't live the rest of your life? You're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Absolutely.
So that's a really big myth that I help people work through, is fats are actually very good for you, especially if you have chronic pain. Anti-inflammatory fats, particularly from fatty fish like salmon, that are high in bioavailable omega-3 acids, fatty acids, are going to be great to reduce your inflammation. That being said, another tip is going to be, you have to reduce added sugars. And that's another thing that really holds people up, because they've been used to low-fat products. And what they don't recognize is, you take the fat out, you take the flavor out, and they have to replace it with something. And they replace it with sugar. So if you're not already tracking your sugar, the American Heart Association recommends that women get no more than 24 grams of added sugar a day, and men no more than 36. A can of Pepsi has 41 grams of added sugar. A Cliff Bar, the Cliff Bars, the energy bars?
Yep.
Okay, those have as much added sugar as a Snickers bar. And so, what I tell people is, you really cannot pay attention to marketing. You have to educate yourself on what's in your food. You have to look at the food label. You have to read the ingredients, because it's so basic. But sugar, especially refined and added sugar, will increase the inflammation in your body, as will unhealthy fats. And I have some YouTube videos about those. But those would be kind of the two biggest things that I start with. And then we move into protein, which is so important. I know you do a lot of strength training videos, and people pretty much across the board are not getting enough protein.
Right. Yeah. And I also find that as well. Yeah. And that's actually one of the first things I ask about, but turns out it should be fat. And I know that a lot of times we kind of think of fat as the enemy, or you think that you have to do keto and kind of go all in and do it. And so what I was wondering is, so if you're having starches or if you're having carbohydrates, should you pair those with fats? Like
Yes.
say if you're
Yeah.
in the morning or something, a lot of times it's a carb-based meal.
Mm-hmm.
If you compare that with fats, now how do you feel about like peanut butter and like what are some good sources of fats to start
Okay.
having besides fish?
Okay, great question. So the short answer to that is download my Ultimate Food Guide. That's where I go through all of the different macronutrients with specific foods. For fats, I consider those, some are good, some are neutral, some are unhealthy. And I break those down in the Ultimate Food Guide. Just go to weightlossforhealth.com/ultimate food guide, and they can get that. So it's funny that you mentioned breakfast because I'm a huge advocate for intermittent fasting. And I really like the 16-8 schedule where, let's say you stop eating at 8 o'clock. I think that this is 16 hours off the top of my head. And then you don't start eating again till noon. Or perhaps you stop eating dinner at 6 and then you don't start eating again until 10. Now you have to structure your meals well enough to get enough nutrients because intermittent fasting is not about eating fewer calories. It's about shortening your eating window, shortening how many times a day you eat to reduce your insulin. So if you're going to eat breakfast, what I recommend is focusing on a high protein and some healthy fat and some fiber. So out of those 3 types of carbs, right, we have the starch, we have the sugar, we have the fiber. A cup of Cheerios has 3 grams of protein. That's not going to cut it. I advocate for 30 grams of protein a meal. That's the minimum needed for optimal muscle protein synthesis. 3 eggs only has 19 grams of protein. So we might think of, oh, great, eggs, like that's healthy for me. And what I find is people are chronically undernourishing their bodies. If your goal is really to lose weight and build muscle, you need to eat and you need to eat a lot of protein. So I recommend, that's kind of what I recommend as a basis, like smoothies, egg scrambles, overnight chia seed pudding I love. There's recipes online for that. And there's ways to add more protein to your meal. But if you're not tracking your food using a macronutrient tracking application and you're really wanting to lose weight, I think that's a great place to start, just to educate yourself about what is in your food. So if you're not going to skip breakfast and you want to eat breakfast, that's what I recommend. I love peanut butter. I still get the stuff with added sugar because it's not that much. And little tip that I got from one of my members is if you want the natural peanut butter, just turn it upside down when you store it. And then the oil doesn't sit on the top and you don't have to like mix it up. So if you want to be extra good and get the peanut butter with no sugar, that's what I recommend. So you asked about the fats. Let's quickly review those. So we have healthy fats, which are going to be the omega-9 fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, unprocessed omega-6 fatty acids, essentially fatty fish, green algae, nuts and seeds, like olives, olive oil, avocados, avocado oil. Those are going to be the healthy ones. I consider saturated fats to be the neutral ones. And I think there's a lot of conflicting advice and opinions about this. But from all of the research that I've done, saturated fats are not going to be that bad for you as long as they're not your primary source of fat. We really do want to bias towards those unsaturated sources. And then the bad ones, I hate using good and bad because I eat everything. I really do. But the ones that we want to limit more are the trans fats and the processed omega-6 fatty acids. So while the seeds and the nuts are going to be healthy for you when they're highly processed, essentially the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s is off kilter and you're eating too much omega-6 and that's inflammatory, which is not going to be good for joint pain. So if joint pain is an issue, really try to reduce the fried foods because those are fried in like the canola oil, soybean oil, those kinds of things.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Long answer to a short question.
Hey, that's okay. Let's go into a little bit about intermittent fasting because I don't know a ton about it. So what is the benefits of doing intermittent fasting? And maybe I know it's kind of a wide question, but who is appropriate typically for, or who do you recommend typically intermittent fasting for?
Okay, well, let's start with the benefits. I think that there's 2 primary camps here. And the first would be weight loss, getting into the fat burning zone because it's first in, first out. If you eat a banana, your body's going to use that banana. So you can choose not to eat and get energy from your butt and your hips and your thighs, or you can choose to eat and get energy from your food. And I go through this in depth in my course. There's a whole module on fasting. So that's the first thing, is it's going to help you tap into the fat burning zone first. Your body essentially uses the glucose circulating, then it's going to use your short-term energy storage of glycogen, and then it taps into your fat or your adipose tissue.
Okay.
So that's number one. And also, fasting will help lower those insulin levels below baseline. So if you have pre-diabetes with a blood sugar of 100 to 125, or diabetes with a fasting blood sugar of 126 higher, there's different A1C levels for diabetes and pre-diabetes too. Intermittent fasting is a really, really excellent strategy, and I highly encourage that you read The Diabetes Code by Dr. Jason Fung. He's a nephrologist, actually. So he was treating people with diabetes, prescribing all of this insulin. Their conditions were only getting worse, and that really sparked him to dive further into this whole topic.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, if you have weight to lose, it's a great strategy. However, if you already have diabetes and you're taking a diabetes medication, you must consult your doctor, because that medication will lower your blood sugar. And then if you're fasting and you're not eating your normal diet, that could really put you into hypoglycemia. So we want to be careful about that. Obviously, I don't think that, your audience is pregnant or breastfeeding, but those are going to be times that it might not be the best strategy. So you're going to want to talk to your doctor specifically to see, especially if you're taking any scheduled medications. And then you asked another question. Oh, there's another thing that intermittent fasting is awesome for regarding disease prevention. There's this thing called autophagy, and I want you to think of it as,
I just did a bunch of research on that because exercise can put you into autophagy. So that's funny.
It's a real thing. And I describe it as cellular cleaning. So if you want to clean out your cellular debris, intermittent fasting is great for that, because it turns on that autophagy. And it's been shown to reduce even things like cancer, which we used to think was kind of, a hopeless situation. There's not. There's a lot that you can do to prevent cancer, prevent dementia, heart disease, diabetes, and intermittent fasting is one of them. Now, if that scares you, I want to remind people you're already intermittently fasting every single day. So breakfast is literally break fast, okay? You're fasting overnight. What I recommend people do is just try 12 hours. Start with a 12-hour fast, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We don't need to do anything dramatic here. And then gradually increase that slowly but surely. I think a 16-8 hour window is very nice. Research shows insulin starts to lower below baseline after about 14 hours. So that's a nice minimum place for people to start. I advocate for up to a 24-hour fast. However, there are benefits beyond that. I just feel like it's outside of my current scope and knowledge base to fully provide the education needed for that. Because if people are on meds, your electrolytes can get out of whack. And quite frankly, it's great for some autophagy, but I'm just not the girl. If you want to go without food for 24 hours, I'm not going to practice something or preach something that I haven't practiced. So I regularly do the 16-8 schedule, and that's really doable. So
yeah, I mean, that definitely seems like it's definitely something that you can kind of do or incorporate. It's just kind of essentially cutting out the evening snacking.
Yeah, pretty much. And maybe pushing breakfast back a little bit. But for most people, you just start with that evening snack, which is super habitual. And that's why that habit change is really important.
Yes. And I definitely can understand that, because I am guilty of that occasionally.
Me too.
And that's definitely a good place to start. And I hadn't learned much about intermittent fasting, nor have I tried it. And I think that it would be interesting to kind of do. I don't know about the 24 hours. I don't
either. The longest I've gone is 20. So yeah. I'd be curious for you too, because you're such an athlete. And so we have to be mindful of the population that I work with. I specifically work with people, usually they're over 50. Mm-hmm. So, and usually they're not athletes. But if you're super athletic and you're active, that might not be the best strategy for you, because you might have more nutrient needs, and you probably have a pretty high protein need because you're young, you have a lot of muscle mass. So Yeah, I think that it really depends on the target that you're talking to.
Okay. And so what if people do like to work out in the morning? Well, I mean, whether it's an intense workout or just like you wake up. I do have one client right now who works out at 6 a.m.
Yep.
And so what do you
Okay,
usually
so
say for that?
again, first thing we're going to check meds. Be sure that there's no morning meds that might be affected by intermittent fasting. The next thing is I probably wouldn't start there. So if they're used to eating before they work out, I would try intermittent fasting on a non-workout day first.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit easier for your body to handle. Recognize that your body will actually perform better under most cases, especially if it's not super intense exercise, in a fasted state. So yeah, your muscle, when you eat, blood has to be diverted to your GI system to digest the food. When you're in a fasted state, you actually have increased mental clarity, which I forgot to mention in the benefits.
Oh.
That's my favorite. It's like, if I need to get stuff done at work, I am not eating in the morning. I need that. I didn't eat this morning, and I was like, because I get one day a week to work right now. We were talking about that offline. I got to be productive. So if you want more mental clarity, more focus, intermittent fasting is great for that too. But when I was going to the gym before COVID, I would see a 30% increase in how much I could lift, whether that was bench press, squat, lunges, pretty much anything, fasted versus fed. So I would love if you kind of work into that and try that. You'll have to touch base and let me know if you try a workout fasted. It might not feel very good at first, but you got to kind of work into it again. So, and then from a running standpoint, if you're doing more of an aerobic exercise, recognize that that's probably going to use more energy in the moment. Obviously, you're going to burn more calories running for half an hour versus weightlifting for half an hour. So you might feel different based on the type of exercise that you're doing, whether you're fasting or you're in a fed state too.
Okay. So if people work out like in the evening to kind of stay in that fasted state, how many hours do you think it needs to be considered like a fasted state?
Oh, honestly, anytime you're not eating, you're fasting.
Okay.
So again, that 14 hours is kind of the magic number where, and different fasting specialists will talk about, like, different keys are turned on, like different hormones are turned on at different lengths of fasts. So like your human growth hormone will increase, which is another reason why it might be beneficial to work out in a fasted state. You're going to have a higher level of human growth hormone for muscle synthesis. But I'd say at least 12 hours, ideally closer to 14, would be considered, in my mind, like the start of intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And so as far as, I know that you talk a lot about mindset, and what is kind of the first thing or one of the biggest things that people have to understand? I know we kind of talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but I talk a lot about mindset as well when we're talking about pain and figuring out why you're in pain and getting through that little bit of discomfort, especially if we have joint pain and arthritis and things like that. But what is kind of the mindset shift that we have to make in order to get the weight loss? Because I feel like a lot of people miss this step and kind of just go into, what should I be eating? How often should I be eating? And we don't focus on this step. And so with exercise, it's important. And I know with weight loss, it's even more important. So what is kind of maybe the top one or two things that people really have to kind of push through to, and I know it probably depends, but have to push through to really kind of break through that plateau or break through whatever they're trying to do?
Well, you're asking really good questions, especially for the freebies that I have. So I'm going to plug that one too. weightlossforhealth.com/free audio is called the 5% mindset training. And what I tell people is 95+% of diets fail. And you need to stop being on a diet and you need to have a diet. And in that training, in that mindset training, I think it's 20 some minutes. And I talk about the top, 7 characteristics of people that I notice who are able to lose weight and successfully keep it off. So I'll give you just a couple of them. Number one is they have to understand their why. So if you're trying to lose weight without an anchor, the waves of emotional eating, the waves of stress, which by the way, stress and sleep deprivation are terrible for insulin and really bad for weight loss, which is another thing that I address in my program. It's not just about eating and exercise, because there's a lot more factors that will affect your hormones. But if you're not anchored in your why, you are not going to have the willpower that it takes in those instances that you could grab the donut, or you could grab the cookie, or you go for the late night snack. Like, I say that willpower is a weak strategy, but you do have to have a little bit of it many times a day.
Yeah,
so there's
absolutely.
a lot that we can do to, like with your environment, to reduce those temptations in the first place. So that's my first tip, is you have to know your why. And I say, if your why doesn't include somebody else and you can't spit it out in 10 seconds or less, it's not strong enough. And you need to work on that. So a lot of my clients, it is, I need to lose weight so that I don't, this is sad to say, but my mom or dad died when they were close to my age. And I want to live longer so that I can be there for my kids and grandkids. So it's quick, and it includes more than themselves.
Okay.
That's just one example.
Yeah.
I think another one is going to be recognizing the need for self-discipline. I mean, this is basic, but all of the weight loss strategies in the world will not get you very far without strong character. So we need to work to become the kind of people that prioritize our health. And I tell them, self-care is not selfish. And you can better care for everybody else in your life if you take care of yourself. And I know this upfront and personal. I've worked with people for months and months and months in rehab who felt like a burden on their family members,
right?
Because they were in this situation that could have been prevented had 15 or 20 years ago, they lost the weight, kept it off, taking care of themselves. And so I really have to convince people in this society that we live in that says we have to be so selfless and give our time away. It's like, no. You need to give your time to yourself first before you give it to anybody else. Don't expect anyone else to do anything for you. Don't expect anyone else to fill your bucket. So those are two things. I think that once you become the type of person that is okay investing in yourself, the next step is recognizing the power of accountability and community, which you're doing such a great job of building your community. Because as James Clear, another James Clear thing says in Atomic Habits, your community is very important. So take a look around you. And if the 5 people closest to you are not healthy, there's a good chance you're not healthy too. So we need to surround ourselves with people who are farther than where we are in whatever area of life we want to grow in. So those are my top 3. Probably know your why, work on your character, work on your belief that it's okay to invest in yourself and you need to take care of yourself first. And then work on that, finding that accountability in the community.
Yes, I think those are all amazing points. And like I said, a lot of times we skip out on that part. And then that's why a lot of, like you said, 95% of diets typically fail, because I know that probably everyone that has watched this has tried a diet sometime in their life and it did not work. And if we skip these things and just go straight to it, then that's why a lot of times they fail, because we have to be kind of in that right mindset. Because it's a long-term thing. It's not just something we do for a month and then we can revert back to everything we used to
unfortunately, no, it's not that easy. It's a lifestyle change. And so if people are not ready to make a lifestyle change, I say, you're not ready for me. Go try another diet. But until you're ready to change your lifestyle, I'm not your girl, because that's what we do.
Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, you have to be willing to commit in order to reap all these benefits. And so what is kind of your best success story of a client you've worked with?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I know you talk a lot about this on your YouTube channel, but go ahead and just give, just so we can tell whoever is listening that this is possible and this can be done. Obviously, it's going to take some hard work and it's going to take some dedication, but it can be done. So your best client success story.
Okay. Well, I have a lot of like favorite clients. I go on a lot of tangents. So I just received the most beautiful thank you note, and doing a virtual business, like I miss that human interaction. And I miss those thank you notes, and I would write a lot of thank you notes to clients, and I got to put it in my file folder with all of my thank you notes, and I got them all out and I spread them all out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really encouraging.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And so I have two stories for you. The first is about knee pain, because I know that's you just have like a new support group for knee pain.
Right.
And she's the sweetest lady, and she was a big aerobic dancer. So Jazzercise specifically. I used to teach Jazzercise, and I had to give it up to run this business.
Yes.
But I just loved it. So she was exercising all of the time. And she had, on average, for at worst, 8 out of 10 knee pain. Okay. And in the morning, she'd be hobbling down the stairs really slowly.
Stiffness, yes.
Stiff, yeah. And so what we did was, the first thing we did was assess her diet. And we recognized that she was having a smoothie in the morning that was mostly sugar, very little protein. And I said, all right, you need protein. Your bones need protein. Your muscles need protein. And we need to cut the added sugar to reduce inflammation. Also, she focused strongly on sleep and hydration. She focused on those two things for a long time. And then the last thing we did was moderate to high intensity functional strength training, which you're just amazing at. I don't know if you've heard this quote, but my favorite geriatric rehab quote is, the only reason we should have someone kick from a seated position is if their goal is to kick a ball from a seated position.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah. So we want that moderate to high intensity functional strength training. She executed amazingly, so consistent, and she was so open to feedback, and she has no knee pain. So she went from 4 to 8 to 0 for months and months now. And she's able to do those lateral movements and Jazzercise. She said, like, I can run down the stairs now in the morning. And so it's just amazing. She can play with her grandkids, all of the great reasons, like all of the great outcomes that we want as a PT. And then recently I had a course member, I'm very big on diabetes prevention. So this one meant a lot to me. She went from the pre-diabetic range to not in less than 8 weeks. Wow. In my course. And so for people who have elevated blood sugars, that's really encouraging to know you can lower them without medication. Yes. And it doesn't have to take forever. You need the right information, and you need to execute consistently. Another client lowered his A1C from 9.2, which is well in the diabetes range, to 5.8, which is just above normal on fewer meds. So I think I have a lot of success stories on my website. People can check them out. And it is so rewarding, like, as a fellow business owner, how rewarding it is to get out of the insurance market. Yes. That, quite frankly, limits the time and quality of services that we can provide, because we're so busy documenting. I always felt like I was a chicken with my head cut off and running around the sniff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just got to be a more effective way to change people's lives. Right. So I'm really passionate about what I do. I think it shows, and
it definitely shows. Yes. And the interesting part about that was, you didn't mention that they lost like X amount of weight.
Oh yeah, good point.
And so, and it's funny because a lot of times we get really, really, we focus way too much on the number, the number of weight loss, but it's all of these other things too. It's all of these other health markers that maybe you have no idea what your A1C is, or maybe you have no idea what your insulin level is, but even just reducing those is going to help change a lot. You're going to feel so much better, more energy, less pain, all of those things. So it's not necessarily about the number. I know that we really get tied up into that, but it's all of these other things that we can track and watch.
Isn't that hilarious? I mean, my business is weight loss for health, and I didn't even mention weight loss in the success, which there are, but to me, my why is preventing disease. Yeah. And, so when people are like, it's not as fast as I want, I'm like, good, let's change your mindset instead of change what you're doing.
Yes. Yep. So no crash course on losing 50 pounds in 2 weeks. Or
no, just spend $1,000 on some program that you're not going to sustain.
Right. Okay. So kind of the biggest takeaways we have so far is potentially looking at intermittent fasting and seeing how that can fit into your life in that 16-8 model. Mm-hmm. And then figuring it's beyond just the weight of weighing yourself and then figuring out how much weight you're actually losing. It's all these other things and how you feel. And that is one thing I did want to detour into a quick question. How do you usually have people track their weight loss?
Yeah.
I know a lot of times we weigh ourselves all the
Yeah.
time, and whether it's a weight measurement or a waist measurement, how do you usually have people track that?
Okay, so in my program, I have this whole spreadsheet on all of the numbers I feel like are important to track. I typically recommend weighing yourself once a week. However, losing baby weight, I weigh myself once a day when I'm in the weight loss mode, which I'm getting back into. I lost the initial bit. I'm like, yeah, this is good for a while. And now I'm going to get back on it. And I'm like, every day is kind of fun to see your progress. Yeah. But here's the deal. If you're weighing yourself every day and it's putting you on an emotional roller coaster because your value and your mood for the day is tied up in a number on the scale, that's a problem. And I don't recommend weighing yourself every day. So yeah, I think that once a week is sufficient. And I also look at waist circumference and waist hip ratio. There's not really a difference in the research on which is more beneficial. I think that waist circumference probably is, because that's a true measure of your visceral fat. Mm-hmm. So for those who have not been through anatomy, like myself and Alyssa, I'm such an anatomy nerd, but you have the skin, and then you have subcutaneous fat, which is under the skin fat. Then you have muscle. Then you have visceral fat in your organ layer, in your organs. Yeah. So that's the visceral fat is that dangerous belly fat that will increase your inflammation and risk for disease. And that's why I think that the waist circumference is another helpful number to look at.
Okay. Okay. And so trying intermittent fasting, really kind of looking at mindset and not getting so focused on the number, but more or less how you feel. And then really just committing to this and not expecting, you know, the magic wand that's going to wave and you're going to lose 50 pounds. I mean, It does take work, and it does take changing long-term habits, and it does take that dedication. And I know a lot of the times we, you know, just search for that easiest way. If I can drink a shake for the next 10 days and it's going to make the, you know, all of this weight come off, then I'm going to do that versus, you know, spending 4 months trying to figure out habits and things. But you want to know the people that are probably the most successful, and I'm sure you're firsthand at knowing this, is the one that took the 4 months and didn't take the easy way out.
Yes. And I think you have to look at your ROI too. So I had someone sign up for my course today, and it was either Jenny Craig or Nutrisystem. I think Jenny Craig. And that's $150 a week for processed crap food that doesn't taste good, that's going to make you feel bad, that's not going to it's not fueling your body. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so you can spend X amount on my program. Actually, she said this even before our call. She's like, yeah, I convinced myself because I realized it was like less than a month's worth of this fake food that I'm eating that's not sustainable. Yeah. So I hear that a lot too. Like, what's the return on the investment for your education? Yeah.
Are you going to just crash lose this weight and then gain it all back? Or are you going to keep it off and, you know, live life the way you want to live it? And that's awesome. And so how can we find you? You have YouTube, you're on Instagram. So what is kind of the best way for people to either reach out or learn more about you?
Okay, so to learn more about me, to reach out, you can go to my website, weightlossforhealth.com.
And I'll have you put that in the comments below too.
Okay, I will do that. And then my email is info@reshapept.com, because the official business is Reshape Physical Therapy and Wellness. So reshapept.com. Do you want me to chat that right now?
Yes, we'll throw that in the comments so that way. So if you want to reach out, if you want to know more about the course, she has all sorts of information, or if you want to get in any of those free masterclasses, I would absolutely recommend it, because like I always say, arthritis management and pain management is a team effort. It's not just one thing. It's not just eating. It's not just exercise. We have to work together. And so a lot of the times, if we've just been trying one thing and aren't seeing results, we may need to bring in something else, because if you're doing every exercise you need to and you're consistent, you're digging that hole, getting away from pain. But then if you're eating these not so great things, then you're just filling that hole back up every single day, and we're not getting anywhere. And so I would highly, highly, highly recommend checking out our course so you can really kind of start to pave the path to pain relief, and then also movement and things are important as well. So if you want to reach out, she did put her information down in the chat, and I'll make sure that you get it. If you want more information, definitely leave a comment below, and then either one of us will reach out.
Yep.
So with that being said, is there any last pieces of advice or wisdom or anything that you want to impart on this audience right now?
Yes, the 90-10 rule. So what I tell people all the time, it's progress over perfection. All right. So I kind of have to twist my members' arms to eat dessert like once a week. Okay. So again, you have to lose weight the way that you want to live it, which for me includes exception meals. I don't call them cheat days. I don't call them cheat meals because I'm not guilty about it. I don't feel guilty one bit. And I don't want you to feel guilty one bit. So I think that partying is, you know, when you embark on this wellness journey, you have to give yourself space and grace and patience and go into it with that long-term mindset of, you know what, sometimes I'm going to have the cake and that's okay. And that's going to slow my progress down and that's okay because I can stay on that train. I can stay on the cake every now and then train, but I can't stay on the train of like the super strict diet all the time.
Right. Absolutely. So. And I think that's absolutely a great piece of advice just because, I mean, if you strive for perfection, that's not sustainable. And that's why people don't sustain keto. That's why people don't sustain all of these cleanses and things like that because they're super strict and you can't live like that.
No. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you for this interview. Yeah,
yes,
that was really
thank you
fun.
so much. I really hope that it was helpful for the listeners. Again, if you watch live, go ahead and type in the comments live. And if you're on the replay and you made it this far, make sure you type replay in the comments. That way we can see who was watching. And then also the more comments that we get, the more people that will be able to see this. And I think that this is super, super important to get out to the masses because there's so much misinformation out there and so many failed diets and frustrations and all of these things that really kind of compound on each other. And then we think it's just not possible. So
it is possible.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely is. And so go ahead and reach out to Dr. Nolte to get more information. And then as always, you can find all of my stuff in my Facebook group and on my YouTube channel at Alyssa Adventure Alive for some workouts to combine with your weight loss efforts.
Yes.
And thank you guys so, so much for watching. And I truly hope that this was helpful. And I know that Dr. Morgan also very hopes this was helpful because we are both very passionate about getting you out of pain and working together in a collaborative effort to get you there. Because like I said, it's a team effort. It's not just one or the other. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments. And then both of us will get back to you. And then have a wonderful rest of your night.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks.